2 words. That's all it takes to end a conversation before it even gets the chance to start. It's fine. You've said it. Someone you love has said it to you. And almost every single time, it means the exact opposite of what it says. Not, I'm okay. Not, this doesn't bother me. What it actually means, underneath the surface, is I don't feel safe enough right now to tell you the truth. Most people hear, it's fine, and simply move on, relieved the conflict is over. But psychology tells a very different story about what's actually happening behind those 2 words, and why the people who say them most often are frequently the ones hurting the most. Today, we're going to break down the real psychology of people who say it's fine when it's anything but, where this pattern comes from, and how to actually reach someone who's using it as a shield.
Let's start with what's actually happening in the moment someone says, it's fine. On the surface, it looks like a simple dismissal, maybe even a bit of stubbornness. But underneath, there's usually a rapid internal calculation happening in a fraction of a second. Is it safe to say what I actually feel right now? Will this person actually listen, or will it make things worse? Do I have the energy for this conversation? For most people who default to it's fine, the answer to at least one of those questions has historically been no. This isn't a character flaw, it's a learned response, one that was likely reinforced long before this exact conversation ever happened. Psychologists point to a concept called emotional invalidation, moments across someone's life where expressing a real feeling was met with dismissal, criticism, or being told they were overreacting. Over enough repetitions, the brain quietly concludes that voicing the truth costs more than it's worth, and it's fine becomes the fastest, safest exit available.
Here's where this pattern actually begins for most people, and it usually starts far earlier than the argument you had last week. Psychologist John Gottman's research on emotional coaching found that children whose feelings were consistently dismissed, told to stop crying or it's not a big deal, don't stop feeling those emotions. They simply stop expressing them out loud. The feeling doesn't disappear, it just goes underground. That child learns an equation that follows them straight into adulthood. Showing real emotion equals risk, and risk is something to avoid. So instead of learning how to say, that hurt me, or I'm upset, they learn a much safer, much smaller phrase that closes the conversation before it can go anywhere dangerous. It's fine isn't a lie in the traditional sense. It's a survival skill that got installed so early, most people using it don't even realize they're doing it anymore.
Take a very common scenario. A partner forgets something important, an anniversary, a promise, a small commitment that actually mattered. When asked, "Are you upset about this?" the immediate response is, "No, it's fine, don't worry about it." But watch what happens over the following days. The tone gets slightly shorter. The warmth dips just a little. Small requests go unanswered a bit longer than usual. Nothing is technically wrong on paper, and yet everything feels different. This is what psychologists call passive emotional leakage. The feeling that was never verbally expressed doesn't just vanish. It finds another way out, usually through subtle withdrawal, irritability over unrelated things, or a quiet distance that the other person can feel but can't quite name. The partner on the receiving end often walks away confused, sensing something is wrong but having no actual information to work with, because the real answer was buried under 2 words that sounded like closure.
The first sign of this pattern is a very specific gap between how someone behaves in front of others and how they behave the moment they're finally alone. In front of the person who hurt them, everything looks composed, maybe even warm. But the second the door closes, the car engine turns off, or the room empties out, the actual emotion finally surfaces. This delay isn't dishonesty. It's the nervous system waiting until it registers the environment as safe enough to stop performing. Psychologically, this reflects a deeply ingrained belief that real emotions are only acceptable in private, never in the moment they're actually triggered.
The second sign is a mental habit that almost never gets noticed from the outside. People who say it's fine often spend enormous amounts of energy rehearsing the honest conversation they never actually have. They compose the message, the explanation, the exact words they'd use if they ever said what they really felt, and then delete it, close the tab, or simply never send it. This happens because part of them genuinely wants to be understood, while another part remains convinced that saying it out loud will only make things worse. The result is a person who is constantly having the real conversation just entirely inside their own head, where no one else can ever actually hear it.
The third sign is one of the most quietly painful. Because someone consistently says it's fine even when it isn't, the people around them slowly stop checking. Friends stop asking twice. Partners stop double-checking if something's actually okay. Coworkers assume silence means agreement. Over time, this creates a strange and lonely position, where the person who never causes friction becomes the person nobody worries about, precisely because they've become so good at appearing unaffected. The very skill that was meant to protect them from conflict ends up making them invisible in the moments they need to be seen the most.
So how does someone actually move out of this pattern? The goal isn't to suddenly become someone who overshares every emotion the moment it appears. That would be overcorrecting in the opposite direction. The goal is learning to close the gap between what's felt and what's said, gradually and safely. There are 3 principles that genuinely help. The first principle is starting smaller than feels necessary. Instead of jumping straight to the full, honest conversation, it can help to practice with lower stakes moments first, saying, "Actually, I'd prefer the other option," about something as small as where to eat, trains the nervous system that expressing a preference doesn't lead to disaster. Small, repeated evidence eventually outweighs the old belief that speaking up is inherently dangerous. The second principle is separating the feeling from the blame. Often, the fear behind "it's fine" isn't the emotion itself. It's the fear that expressing it will sound like an accusation. Learning to say, "I felt hurt when that happened," instead of "you hurt me," keeps the door open for a real conversation, rather than triggering a defensive one. This single shift in language often makes honesty feel significantly less risky. The third principle is choosing one safe person to practice with first. Rebuilding the belief that honesty is survivable doesn't need to happen with everyone at once. Choosing one person who has consistently shown up with patience and care, and practicing small moments of honesty with them specifically, gives the nervous system real proof that the old rule no longer applies, at least not with everyone. If you're someone who says "it's fine" more often than you actually mean it, understand this. You didn't become this way because something is wrong with you. You became this way because somewhere along the line, honesty felt too expensive, and silence felt like the safer investment. But the same sensitivity that taught you to protect others from your emotions is the same sensitivity that makes you capable of real, deep connection, once you finally believe it's safe enough to let someone in. This video is intended for general educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional psychological consultation or therapy. If patterns of emotional suppression are significantly affecting your relationships or well-being, consider speaking with a licensed mental health professional. If you saw yourself in this video, share in the comments the last time you said "it's fine" when you actually meant the opposite. If today's video gave you a little more clarity, hit like and share it with someone who could use permission to finally say what they really feel. I'm Iko,
don't forget to subscribe so we can keep exploring the hidden corners of the mind together. Goodbye, and I'll see you next time.